The lightning struck so close that Rowan Xavier could taste metal in his mouth. And then the world went white, then black, and he understood with terrifying clarity that he would never see the mountains again. The bolt had split an old pine not 15 feet from where he stood on the ridge, and the explosion of light and sound had thrown him backward against the rocks. Now he lay there, every muscle trembling, his eyes open but seeing nothing except an endless dark void that made his stomach churn with panic. He was alone on the ridge above Pecos, Texas, in the summer of 1877, and he was blind. Rowan had been tracking a wounded elk for the better part of the day, moving higher into the Guadalupe Mountains that rose like ancient sentinels east of the dusty town. At 28 years old, he had spent the last 7 years living mostly alone in these mountains, trapping and hunting, selling furs and meat to the settlements below. His body had grown hard and powerful from the work, his shoulders broad as an axe handle, his arms corded with muscle from hauling traps and splitting wood and wrestling stubborn mules up steep trails. His dark hair hung past his collar, and his beard was thick enough to keep the winter wind from his face. He was not a man who frightened easily, but fear gripped him now with iron fingers. He tried to stand and immediately stumbled, his sense of balance gone wrong without his vision to anchor him. His hands found the rough bark of a tree and he clung to it, breathing hard, trying to calm the hammering of his heart. The storm was moving off now, the thunder growing more distant, but rain still fell in cold sheets that soaked through his buckskin shirt and ran down his face like tears he refused to shed. Think, he told himself. Think like you have sense. His camp was somewhere below, maybe a mile down the mountain, but he could not remember exactly where. The terrain here was treacherous even with good eyes, all loose rock and sudden drops and twisted paths that led nowhere. In the dark behind his useless eyes, he could picture it all too clearly. One wrong step, and he would tumble off a cliff or break his leg in a crevice, and that would be the end of Rowan Xavier, mountain man. He had no wife waiting for him, no children, no one who would miss him if he did not come down from the mountain. His parents were long dead, his brother had gone to California years ago, and the few friends he had in Pecos would likely assume he had just moved on to new hunting grounds. He could die up here and the mountain would keep his secret. The thought made him angry, and anger was better than fear. He had survived too much to let a lightning strike finish him. He had lived through a Comanche raid when he was 21, had killed a grizzly bear with nothing but a knife when his rifle misfired, had endured winters so cold that his breath froze in his beard. He would survive this too. But how? He forced himself to think methodically. He could not see, but his other senses still worked. He could hear the rain pattering on the leaves, could feel the rough bark under his palms, could smell the sharp scent of ozone and wet pine. He could use these things. He had to use these things. Carefully, he began to move, keeping one hand on the tree and sweeping the other in front of him. His foot struck a rock and he nearly fell, caught himself, kept going. Every step was an act of faith. The rain made everything slippery and uncertain. He had no idea if he was moving in the right direction or walking straight toward a precipice. Time became meaningless. He might have been walking for minutes or hours. His hands were scraped raw from clutching at rocks and branches, his shins bruised from colliding with unseen obstacles. The rain finally stopped, but that made things little better. Without the sound of it, the mountain seemed too quiet, and he could not tell if he was going up or down anymore. Then he heard something that made him stop dead in his tracks, a voice. A woman's voice, singing. It came from somewhere ahead and to his left, thin and sweet on the wind. He could not make out the words at first, but the melody was clear, rising and falling like water over stones. He stood frozen, listening, wondering if the lightning had done something worse than blind him. Maybe he was dead already and this was some strange afterlife. But no, his body hurt too much for him to be dead. The pain was real. The voice was real. He turned toward the sound and began to walk again, more quickly now, following that thread of song through the darkness. He stumbled and fell hard, scraping his palms on the rocks, but he pushed himself up and kept going. The voice grew louder, clearer, and now he could hear the words. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. The irony of those last words hit him like a fist, but he kept moving toward the voice. It was the only real thing in his dark world, the only guide he had. He called out, his voice rough and hoarse. "Hello, I need help." The singing stopped abruptly. There was a moment of silence, and then the voice called back, much closer than he expected. "Who is there? Where are you? My name is Rowan Xavier. I was struck by lightning. I cannot see. Please, I need help." He heard movement, the sound of footsteps on rock, and then her voice came from right in front of him, filled with concern and something else, a kind of quiet strength. "Do not move. There is a drop just 3 feet in front of you. Stay exactly where you are." He froze, his heart suddenly racing again. 3 feet from death, maybe less. He had been walking blind toward the edge. "I am coming to you," the voice said. "Just stay still. I will guide you back from there." He heard her moving carefully, and then a hand touched his arm, small but firm, and he nearly wept with relief at that simple human contact. "I have you," she said. "You are safe now. Turn slowly to your right just a little. That is good. Now step back, small steps. I will keep hold of you." He did as she instructed, placing his trust entirely in this stranger. Her hand on his arm was steady, her voice calm and sure. After a few steps, she said, "We are clear of the edge now. Come with me. I have a shelter not far from here. Can you walk?" "Yes, just tell me where to go." "Give me your hand." He reached out and felt her hand slip into his, her fingers slim and warm despite the cold rain. She was small, he could tell that much from the height of her voice and the size of her hand, but there was nothing fragile about her grip. "My name is Kate Lawson," she said. "I am going to lead you to my camp. Watch for rocks and roots. I will warn you of obstacles." She began to walk, and he followed, his hand clasped in hers like a child being led through the dark. She spoke constantly as they went, telling him when to step high, when to duck under a branch, when to move left or right. Her voice was like a lantern in his darkness, showing him the way. "Step up here. There is a fallen log. That is good. Now we go down a small slope. Take it slow. Watch for loose stones on your left." He could not guess how far they walked. All he knew was that voice, that hand, and the careful placement of each foot. Without her, he would be dead on the rocks below the ridge. He owed this woman his life, and he did not even know what she looked like. Finally, she said, "We are here. My shelter is a rock overhang, very low. You will need to duck. I will guide you." She led him under what felt like a shelf of stone, and the sudden absence of wind was a relief. He could smell smoke and coffee and wet canvas. She had some kind of camp set up here. "Sit down here," she said, guiding him to what felt like a bedroll spread on the ground. "You are soaked through. You need to get warm before you catch your death." He sank down onto the bedroll, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Every muscle ached and his head throbbed where it had struck the rocks. He felt her moving around the small space, heard the crackle of a fire being built up. "I have some dry clothes that might fit you," she said. "They belonged to my father. He was a large man." "Your father?" he asked. "Is he here?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had gone quiet and sad. "He died 3 days ago. I buried him down the mountain at dawn yesterday. I have been sitting here trying to decide what to do next." "I am sorry," Rowan said and meant it. "What happened?" His heart stopped. He just sat down by the fire after supper and said he felt tired, and then he was gone. He was 62 years old. We had been prospecting together for 2 years looking for silver. Never found much, but he was happy doing it. He loved these mountains. She came closer, and he felt her hands on his shoulders, helping him out of his wet buckskin shirt. He should have felt embarrassed or awkward, but there was nothing improper about her touch. It was practical, efficient, the touch of someone who had nursed the sick or tended the wounded. He heard her wring out the shirt and hang it somewhere, and then she pressed a dry shirt into his hands. "Put this on. I will turn away." He managed to get the shirt on, though his hands were shaking from cold and shock. It was too small across the shoulders, but it was dry and warm, and that was what mattered. "I have coffee," she said, "and some beans left from yesterday. You should eat something." "Thank you." She pressed a tin cup into his hands, and he wrapped his fingers around it, feeling the heat seep into his cold skin. The coffee was strong and bitter and wonderful. He drank it slowly, trying to gather his scattered thoughts. "I do not understand," he said finally. "What were you doing up on that ridge? I know that area. There is nothing up there except rock and sky." "I went up to think," she said. "After my father died, I needed to be somewhere high, somewhere I could see far. I was trying to figure out what to do, where to go. I do not have any family left except a cousin in Santa Fe that I have never met. I was sitting up there singing hymns, the ones my mother used to sing, and then I heard you calling. You saved my life," he said. "If you had not been there, I would have walked right off that cliff." "Maybe we saved each other," she said quietly. "I have been alone with my grief for 2 days, and it was starting to feel like it would swallow me whole. Having someone to help, something to do, it makes the world feel a little less empty." He heard the loneliness in her voice and recognized it because it matched his own. They were two people who had been alone in the wilderness, and fate or providence or blind chance had brought them together. "What will you do now?" she asked. "About your eyes, I mean." "Do you think the blindness is permanent?" "I do not know. I have heard of people struck by lightning who recovered their sight after a time. I have also heard of people who never recovered. I suppose I will find out which kind I am. We should get you to a doctor." "There is one in Pecos, is there not?" "There is, but he is a drunk and a fool. There is a better doctor in El Paso, but that is 100 miles west. I have no way to get there." "I can take you," she said, and the quiet determination in her voice surprised him. "I have 2 mules and my father's supplies. We can leave tomorrow if you are strong enough to travel." "You would do that? You do not even know me." "You need help and I am here. That is all the reason I need. Besides, I told you I was trying to figure out where to go. El Paso seems as good a destination as any. I can find work there, start over." "What kind of work?" he asked. "I can sew, cook, clean. I can read and write and do figures. I worked as a teacher in Missouri before my father got the prospecting fever and dragged me out here. Someone in El Paso will need those skills." She spoke with a practical confidence that made him believe her. This was not a woman who would fall apart when things got difficult. She had buried her father alone, had been living in the mountains, had saved a blind stranger from falling to his death. She was strong in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. "I have money saved," he said. "Not a lot, but enough. I can pay for the journey and I will pay you for your help." "Keep your money," she said firmly. "I am not asking for payment. I am offering help to someone who needs it." "That is different." He wanted to argue, but something in her tone told him it would be pointless. Instead, he said, "Then I am grateful, Kate Lawson, more grateful than I can say." "Rest now," she said. "You have been through an ordeal. I will keep watch and make sure the fire stays lit. We will start for El Paso at first light." He lay back on the bedroll, his body aching, his mind spinning. Everything had changed in a single blinding moment. He was helpless now, dependent on a woman he could not even see. It went against everything he had been for the past 7 years. He had prided himself on his independence, his strength, his ability to survive alone in the wilderness. Now all of that was gone, burned away by a lightning strike. But as he lay there in the darkness listening to Kate moving quietly around the camp, feeding the fire, settling in for the night, he felt something unexpected. A small flicker of hope. He was not alone anymore. Someone cared enough to help him, to guide him, to save him from the darkness. It was a strange feeling after so many years of solitude, but not an unwelcome one. He slept fitfully, his dreams full of white light and falling, and woke several times to find the fire still burning and Kate sitting nearby, a silent guardian. Each time he felt that flicker of gratitude and something else, something he was not quite ready to name. When dawn came, he could not see it, but he felt the change in the air, heard the birds beginning to sing. Kate was already moving around, packing supplies, and he heard her talking softly to the mules. "Good morning," she said, coming over to him. "How do you feel?" "Like I was struck by lightning," he said, and was surprised to hear her laugh, a sound like water over stones, bright and clear. "Well, at least you have not lost your sense of humor. That is a good sign. Can you stand?" He stood, wobbling slightly until she took his arm to steady him. She guided him outside the shelter, and he felt the sun on his face, warm and good despite everything. "I have packed everything except the bedroll you slept on," she said. "I will roll that up now. There are beans and coffee for breakfast. Sit here and I will bring them to you." He sat on a rock and waited, feeling useless and frustrated. He was a man who did things, who worked with his hands, who provided for himself. Now he could not even pack his own bedroll. Kate seemed to sense his mood because she said gently, "It is hard to accept help, is it not? Especially for a man like you, one who is used to being strong and capable." "How do you know what kind of man I am? You cannot see me any better than I can see you." "I can see you just fine," she said, and he heard the smile in her voice. "You are tall, very tall, with shoulders like a barn door and arms that could probably break a tree in half. Your hair is long and dark, and you have a beard that needs trimming. Your hands are scarred and calloused from hard work. You move like someone who knows the wilderness, even blinded. You are a mountain man through and through." He felt himself flush, though whether from embarrassment or pleasure he could not say. "You have sharp eyes. I have learned to pay attention to things. My father taught me that. He said the mountains would tell you their secrets if you just knew how to look." She brought him breakfast, and they ate in companionable silence. The beans were good, the coffee strong. When they finished, she said, "I am going to load the mules now. It will take a little time. Just sit here and rest." He sat and listened to her work, hearing the creak of leather and the soft sounds of the mules shifting their weight. She spoke to the animals constantly, her voice low and soothing, calling them by name, Ruby and Buck. They seemed calm under her hands, which told him she knew what she was doing. Finally, she came back to him. "We are ready. I am going to help you mount Ruby. She is the steadier of the two. I will lead her while I ride Buck. Is that acceptable?" "Yes, thank you." She guided him to the mule and helped him get his foot in the stirrup. He swung himself up, his body remembering the motion even if his eyes could not guide him. The saddle felt secure, and Ruby stood steady beneath him. "I have tied a rope from your saddle to mine," Kate said. "So we stay together. If you need to stop, just call out. We will take it slow." "I trust you," he said, and realized it was true. He had known this woman for less than a day, but he trusted her with his life. There was no other choice. They started down the mountain, and Rowan had never felt so vulnerable in his life. Every step the mule took could be the one that sent him tumbling. Every sound made him tense. But Kate's voice was constant, calling back to him, telling him what lay ahead, reassuring him that all was well. There is a narrow stretch here, but Ruby knows the way. Just trust her. That is good. Now we are coming to a stream crossing. The water is shallow, but the rocks are slippery. She will take it slow. Hour after hour, her voice guided him through the wilderness he had thought he knew so well. Now it was alien territory, unknowable and dangerous, and he was entirely dependent on her knowledge and skill. They stopped at midday to rest the mules and eat some jerky and hardtack. Kate helped him down from the saddle, and they sat in the shade of a rock while the mules cropped at the sparse grass. "How much farther to Pico's?" he asked. "We should reach it by nightfall if we keep a steady pace. We can stay at the boarding house there, get a good night's rest in real beds, and set out for El Paso in the morning. The journey to El Paso will take 4 or 5 days, depending on the weather and the mules. You have thought this through." "I have had time to think these past few days." "Too much time, maybe. When you are alone with your thoughts for too long, they start to go in circles." "I know that feeling well," he said. "I have spent years alone in these mountains. Sometimes I would go weeks without speaking to another person. I told myself I preferred it that way, that I was better off without the complications of other people. Now I am not so sure." "What made you choose this life?" she asked. "Living alone in the wilderness." He was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "After the war, I came back to find my home burned, my parents dead from fever. My brother had already left for California. I tried to settle in town, work in a store, be normal. But I felt trapped, like I could not breathe. The mountains called to me. Up here, everything made sense. You hunt to eat, you work to stay warm, you survive or you do not. It was clean and simple." "And lonely," she said softly. "Yes, very lonely. But I told myself that was the price of freedom. My father used to say that freedom without someone to share it with is just another word for loneliness." I did not understand what he meant until he was gone. Now I understand perfectly. They sat in silence for a while, and Rowan felt the sun on his face and listened to the wind in the grass. Despite his blindness, despite his fear and uncertainty, he felt oddly at peace. Kate's presence was like an anchor, keeping him grounded. "We should move on," she said eventually. "We still have miles to cover." She helped him back onto Ruby, and they continued down the mountain. The terrain grew easier as they descended, the path wider and less steep. Kate talked to him about the landscape they were passing through, describing the colors of the rocks, the shape of the clouds, the way the light fell on the distant plains. She painted pictures with her words, and Rowan found himself grateful for every detail. "There is a hawk circling above us," she said. "A red tail, I think, from the call, and there, see those tracks in the dust. Deer, probably a doe and her fawn. They passed this way not long ago. The mountains are full of life, even when it seems empty." "You have a poet's eye," he said. "My mother loved poetry. She taught me to see the beauty in things, even when life was hard. She died when I was 12, and I have tried to hold onto what she taught me. Sometimes it is the only thing that keeps the darkness at bay." He heard the grief in her voice and wished he could see her face, read the emotions there. All he had were words and tone, and he found himself listening more carefully than he ever had before, attuned to every nuance. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Kate said, "I can see Pico's ahead. We will be there within the hour." Rowan felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. In Pico's, there would be people, questions, stares. He would be an object of pity, the blind mountain man who had to be led around like a child. It galled him, but there was nothing to be done about it. They rode into town as the shadows grew long, and Rowan heard the sounds of civilization. voices calling, dogs barking, a piano playing somewhere. It all seemed too loud, too chaotic after the quiet of the mountains. Kate guided him to the boarding house and helped him down from the mule. "Wait here," she said. "I will arrange for rooms." He stood by the mules, feeling exposed and awkward, knowing people were watching him. He could hear whispered conversations, the word blind repeated several times. His jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Kate returned quickly. "I have 2 rooms," she said. "They are small but clean. Come, I will take you up." She took his arm and led him inside, up a flight of stairs, down a hallway. She opened a door and guided him into a small room. "Your bed is straight ahead, about 5 paces. There is a washstand to your left, a chair to your right. I have the room next door. I will bring you water for washing, and then I will see to the mules and our supplies." "Let me help with the mules," he said. "No, you rest. You have been through enough today." "Kate, I am not an invalid. I can still work." "I know you can. But right now you need to rest and let your body recover. There is no shame in that." He wanted to argue further, but the exhaustion hit him like a wave. She was right. He was spent. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." "You are welcome, Rowan Xavier. I will check on you in an hour. We can get supper then if you are hungry." She left, and he was alone in the darkness that was now his constant companion. He found the bed and sat on it, then lay back, his mind reeling. So much had changed in just 2 days. He had lost his sight, lost his independence, lost the life he had built. But he had gained something too, though he was still not sure what to call it. A companion, a guide, a friend, or maybe something more. He pushed that thought away. It was too soon, too complicated. Kate had just lost her father. She was helping him out of kindness, nothing more. He could not let himself think beyond that. But as he lay there waiting for her return, he found himself remembering the sound of her voice, the feel of her hand in his, the way she laughed. And despite everything, he smiled. True to her word, Kate returned an hour later and took him down to the dining room. She described the room to him as they entered, telling him where the tables were, how many people were present. She guided him to a chair and sat across from him. The food was simple but good. Steak, potatoes, beans. Kate cut his meat for him without being asked, and he felt a flash of embarrassment but accepted it. He would have to get used to accepting help, at least until he learned to navigate this new darkness. As they ate, Kate told him about the mules, how she had found a stable with fair prices and clean stalls. She talked about the town, describing the buildings and the people she had seen. She seemed to understand his need to picture the world around him, and he was grateful for her thoughtfulness. "There was a man at the stable," she said. "He asked about you. He said he remembered you from last winter when you sold furs here. His name was Thomas, I think. He seemed concerned when I told him about the lightning." "Thomas runs the trading post," Rowan said. "He is a good man. Honest in his dealings. He said if you need anything, you should let him know. He seemed genuine. He is one of the few people in Pecos I would trust." After supper, Kate led him back upstairs. At his door, she paused. "I have been thinking," she said, "about El Paso and the doctor. What if he cannot help you? What will you do then?" "I do not know," he admitted. "I have not let myself think that far ahead." "Well, I have been thinking about it. If the doctor cannot restore your sight, you will need to learn to live without it. You will need to learn new ways of doing things, new ways of navigating the world. It will not be easy, but it is possible. I have read about blind people who live full, productive lives. There is no reason you cannot do the same. You have a lot of faith in me for someone you just met. I have a lot of faith in strength and determination, and you have both in abundance. You survived being struck by lightning and walked half a mountain with no sight. You are not someone who gives up easily." "Neither are you," he said. "You buried your father and kept going. You saved a stranger. You are planning a 100-mile journey through dangerous country. That takes courage, or stubbornness. My father always said the two were hard to tell apart. He heard the smile in her voice and found himself smiling too. Get some rest, Kate. Tomorrow will be a long day. You too, Rowan. Good night. He listened to her footsteps retreat down the hall, heard her door open and close. Then he went into his room and closed his own door, shutting out the world. That night, he dreamed he could see again. And in his dream, Kate had auburn hair and green eyes, though he had no idea if that was true. She smiled at him in the dream, and he reached for her. But then he woke in the darkness and remembered that he was blind and she was just a stranger helping him out of kindness. But the memory of the dream stayed with him, warm and bright. They left Pico's at dawn, Kate riding Buck and leading Ruby with Rowan on her back. The road to El Paso was well traveled, and Kate described the other travelers they encountered. Freight wagons hauling goods, families in covered wagons heading west, cowboys driving cattle, a circuit preacher on a tired horse. The days fell into a rhythm. They would ride for several hours, stop to rest the mules and eat, then ride again until the sun began to set. Each evening, Kate would find a place to camp, usually near water if possible. She would set up the camp, build a fire, cook supper, all while Rowan sat and felt useless. On the third day, he could not take it any more. "Let me help," he said as she was setting up the coffee pot. "You are helping by staying out of the way," she said, not unkindly. "I need to do something, Kate. I am going mad just sitting here." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "All right. Come here. I will show you where the fire is. You can tend it while I cook. Just listen to the sound of it, feel the heat. Add wood when it starts to die down. Can you do that?" "Yes." She guided his hand to the pile of firewood she had gathered, then helped him position himself by the fire. He could feel the heat on his face, hear the crackle of the flames. When he judged it was time, he reached for a piece of wood, felt its size and shape, and carefully placed it on the fire. The flames caught and grew brighter, and he felt a small surge of satisfaction. It was a simple task, one he had done 1,000 times before, but now it felt like a victory. "Good," Kate said. "See, there are things you can still do, you just have to learn to do them differently." Over the next few days, she found more tasks for him. She taught him to feel the coffee pot to tell if the water was boiling, to judge the doneness of meat by touch and smell rather than sight. She described the landscape in such detail that he could picture it. The vast stretches of scrubland, the distant mountains, the endless sky. She became his eyes, and he found himself depending on her more than he had ever depended on anyone. But it was not just dependence. As they traveled together, talking to pass the hours, he began to learn who Kate Lawson really was. She was 23 years old, had been married briefly when she was 19 to a man who died of pneumonia less than a year after their wedding. She had no children. After her husband's death, she had gone back to teaching, but when her father decided to try prospecting, she had given it all up to go with him because he was all the family she had left. "I do not regret it," she said as they rode. "Those 2 years with him were precious. We did not find silver, but we found something more valuable. We found time together, away from the world. We talked about everything under the sun. He told me stories about my mother, about his own childhood, things he had never had time to share before. It was a gift, those 2 years. Even though they ended in grief, I would not trade them for anything." "He was lucky to have you," Rowan said. "I was lucky to have him. He taught me so much. How to survive in the wilderness, how to read the weather, how to find water, how to be strong when things got hard. I think he knew his heart was failing. I think he was preparing me for a life without him, though I did not see it at the time. Do you miss teaching?" "Sometimes. I loved working with children, seeing their minds open up to new ideas. But I do not miss the constraints of town life, the expectations and gossip. Out here I can breathe." He understood that feeling perfectly. "What will you do in El Paso?" "I am not sure yet. Find work, like I said, save money. Maybe head to Santa Fe eventually and meet that cousin. Maybe strike out on my own. I have learned that I am capable of more than I thought. The future does not frighten me the way it once would have." As they talked, Rowan found himself drawn to her in ways he had not expected. It was not just gratitude, though he was certainly grateful. It was something deeper, something that went beyond the practical help she provided. He liked the sound of her voice, the way she thought about things, her quiet strength and gentle humor. He liked the person she was, but he kept those feelings to himself. He was a blind man with an uncertain future. He had nothing to offer her. She deserved better than a broken mountain man who might never see again. On the 5th day, they reached the outskirts of El Paso. Kate described the town as they approached. Adobe buildings baked pale by the sun, a bustling plaza, the Rio Grande flowing brown and slow. It was bigger than Pico's, more prosperous with wide streets and established businesses. She found a boarding house and got them rooms, then asked directions to the doctor's office. The next morning, she led Rowan through the streets to a neat building on the main road. The doctor was named Samuel Rhodes, and he had a reputation as a skilled physician who had trained back east. Kate explained Rowan's situation while the doctor examined his eyes, checking the pupils, asking questions about the lightning strike. Finally, Dr. Rhodes said, "I can find no physical damage to the eyes themselves. The pupils respond to light, which suggests the problem is not with the eyes but with the nerves behind them. Lightning can cause all manner of neurological damage. Sometimes it heals on its own, sometimes it does not. I am afraid there is no treatment I can offer. We simply have to wait and see if your sight returns." "How long?" Rowan asked, his voice tight. "That is impossible to say. Days, weeks, months, or never. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I cannot. I am sorry." The words hit Rowan like stones. He had been holding on to hope, thin as it was, that the doctor could do something, anything. Now that hope was gone. "Thank you for your time," he said, his voice carefully neutral. Kate paid the doctor and led Rowan back out into the street. They walked in silence for a while, and then Kate said gently, "It is all right to be angry or sad. You do not have to be strong all the time." "What good does it do to be angry?" he said. "It will not change anything." "No, but it might make you feel better to let it out instead of bottling it up." They had reached a small park, and she led him to a bench in the shade. They sat, and Rowan felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. His sight might never return. He might be blind for the rest of his life. Everything he had known, everything he had been, was gone. "I do not know how to do this," he said finally, the words rough and raw. "I do not know how to be this person. No one does at first, but you will learn. You are strong and smart and capable. You will adapt. How can you be so sure? Because I have seen you do it already. Every day you have learned a little more, adapted a little more. You tended the fire. You helped pack the mules this morning. You are not giving up. You are fighting. That is all anyone can do." He turned toward her voice, wishing desperately that he could see her face. "Why are you helping me, Kate? You do not owe me anything. You could have left me on that mountain, gone to El Paso on your own. Why did you stay?" She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft and honest. "Because when I saw you on that ridge, blind and lost and terrified, I saw myself. Not physically, but in spirit. I have been lost and blind in my own way since my father died, not knowing where to go or what to do. Helping you gave me purpose, gave me a direction. You needed me, and I needed to be needed. Maybe that is selfish, but it is the truth. That is not selfish, he said. That is human. We have helped each other, I think. You gave me something to focus on besides my grief, and I gave you a way off the mountain. We make a good team. A team. He liked the sound of that, but it also filled him with a strange ache because he knew this could not last forever. Eventually, Kate would find work, start her new life. He would have to figure out his own path. They would go their separate ways. The thought hurt more than it should have. "What will you do now?" Kate asked. "Will you go back to Pico's?" "I cannot go back to the mountains. Not like this. I would not survive a week. I suppose I will stay here, try to find work I can do without sight. There must be something." "There is," she said firmly. "We will figure it out together. Kate, you have already done so much. You cannot keep looking after me." "Why not?" "Because you have your own life to build. You do not need a blind man slowing you down. What if I want to help? What if I told you that these past days, traveling with you, talking with you, it has meant something to me? What if I am not ready to say goodbye yet?" Her words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Rowan's heart was suddenly pounding. "Kate." "I know it is too soon," she said quickly. "I know you probably think I am just being kind or that I feel obligated somehow, but it is not that. I like you, Rowan. I like talking to you, being with you. You are strong and brave and good, and you make me laugh even when things are hard. I do not want to walk away from that, not yet." He could not quite believe what he was hearing. "You barely know me." "I know you better than you think. I have seen you at your most vulnerable, and you did not break. I have heard the way you talk about the mountains and the wilderness with such love. I have felt the gentleness in you even though you are so strong. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. I am blind, Kate. I might be blind for the rest of my life. I have nothing to offer you. You have yourself to offer, and that is enough. If you want to offer it, that is. I am not asking for promises or commitments. I am just asking if maybe we can keep traveling this road together for a while longer. See where it leads." Rowan felt something in his chest crack open, some hard shell he had built around himself after years of solitude. She was offering him something he had thought was lost forever. Connection, companionship, maybe even love. "I want that," he said, his voice hoarse. "More than I can say. But I need you to understand what you are taking on. Learning to live blind will not be easy. I will be frustrated and angry and difficult. I will need help with things that should be simple. It will not be romantic or noble. It will be hard and messy and sometimes humiliating. I know. And I am still here." He reached out, his hand searching the air between them, and she took it, her fingers warm and sure. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, not speaking, just being together in the dappled shade. Finally, Rowan said, "Tell me what you look like." "I have been trying to picture you, but all I have are guesses." She laughed softly. "I am not a great beauty, I am afraid. My hair is brown, not quite auburn, and I wear it in a simple braid. My eyes are blue, or maybe gray, depending on the light. I have freckles from too much sun, and I am shorter than most women, barely over 5 feet. My hands are rough from work, and I have a scar on my chin from falling off a horse when I was 10. My father used to say I looked like my mother, but I do not see it." "You sound beautiful to me," he said, and meant it. "You are kind to say so. I am honest. I do not have the luxury of lying anymore. I have to say what I mean. Then I will be honest too. I think you are the most beautiful man I have ever seen. Your face is strong and weathered, with lines around your eyes from squinting at the sun. Your hands are scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who has worked hard all his life. You move like you own the world, even now, even blind. There is something in you that is wild and free, and I find it magnificent." He felt heat rise in his face. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. "Kate, I mean it. Every word. They sat in the park for another hour, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other. When they finally returned to the boarding house, Rowan felt lighter than he had since the lightning struck. He was still blind, still uncertain about the future, but he was not alone. Kate was with him, and that made all the difference. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a new rhythm. Kate found work as a seamstress for a woman who owned a dress shop, and Rowan started learning skills that did not require sight. Kate taught him to weave baskets using willow branches, feeling the pattern with his fingers. She found a man who made brooms and convinced him to take Rowan on as an apprentice. It was simple work, repetitive and humble, but it was work he could do. In the evenings, they would walk together through the town, Kate describing everything she saw, Rowan gradually building a mental map of El Paso. She introduced him to people, made sure he was included in conversations. She never treated him like he was fragile or incapable, but she was always there when he needed guidance. And somewhere along the way, friendship deepened into something more. It started with small things. The way her hand would linger in his when she helped him navigate a crowded street. The way she laughed at his jokes, genuine and bright. The way she would touch his shoulder when she wanted his attention, a brief contact that sent warmth through him. One evening, about a month after they arrived in El Paso, they were sitting on the porch of the boarding house, enjoying the cool air after a hot day. They had been talking about the future, about whether to stay in El Paso or move on to Santa Fe. "I think I would like to meet your cousin," Rowan said. "If we went to Santa Fe, I mean, she is your family. She is family in name only. I have never met her. Still, she is a connection to your mother. That seems important." Kate was quiet for a moment, then said, "You are thinking long-term." "About us traveling together, I mean." "Yes, if that is what you want." "It is what I want. But Rowan, we need to talk about what we are to each other. We have been dancing around it for weeks now, and I think we need to be honest." His heart was suddenly beating very fast. "All right. What do you want to say?" "I want to say that I have fallen in love with you. Somewhere between the mountain and here, between the fear and the hope, I fell in love. With your strength and your gentleness, with your honesty and your humor. With the man you are, blind or sighted. I love you, Rowan Xavier, and I need you to know that." The words hit him like a benediction, like grace he had not earned but was receiving anyway. He turned toward her voice, reaching for her, and she took his hands. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have been afraid to say it, afraid you would think I was just grateful or dependent. But it is more than that. You are everything to me, Kate. You are my eyes, yes, but more than that, you are my heart. You gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. You made me believe I could have a life worth living, even in the dark. I love you so much it terrifies me. Do not be terrified, be joyful. We found each other against all odds, two lonely people on a mountain. That is a miracle, is it not?" "Yes," he said, "it is." She leaned forward and he felt her breath on his face, and then her lips touched his, soft and warm and certain. He kissed her back, pouring everything he felt into that kiss, all the love and gratitude and wonder. When they finally pulled apart, he was breathless. "Marry me," he said, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. "I know it is fast. I know I am blind and poor and have nothing to offer but myself, but marry me, Kate. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you." "Yes," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Yes, yes, yes. I will marry you, Rowan Xavier. I will be your wife and your partner and your eyes for as long as we both shall live." They sat on that porch holding each other, talking about the future they would build together. And for the first time since the lightning struck, Rowan felt truly happy. The darkness was still there, would always be there, but Kate was his light, and with her by his side he could face anything. They were married 3 days later by the circuit preacher who happened to be passing through El Paso. It was a simple ceremony held in the boarding house parlor, with the landlady and her husband as witnesses. Kate wore a blue dress she had sewn herself, and Rowan wore clean clothes borrowed from the landlady's son. He could not see Kate as she stood beside him, but he did not need to. He knew she was beautiful because she was Kate, and that was enough. When the preacher said they were husband and wife, Rowan kissed her with all the love in his heart, and the landlady cried happy tears. That night, in the small room they now shared, Kate described everything to Rowan. The way the moonlight fell through the window, the pattern of shadows on the wall, the silver glint of the wedding ring he had bought her with his savings. And then she guided his hands to her face, letting him learn her features by touch, the curve of her cheek, the line of her jaw, the softness of her lips. "I see you," he whispered, "not with my eyes but with my heart. And you are so beautiful, Kate, so beautiful. I love you," she said. Now and always. They made love that night with tenderness and passion, learning each other in the darkness, and Rowan thought that perhaps blindness was not the curse he had believed. Perhaps it was a strange kind of gift, because it had brought him to Kate, had taught him to see with more than just his eyes. In the months that followed, they built a life together. Kate continued her work as a seamstress, and Rowan became skilled at making brooms and baskets that sold well in the market. They saved their money, dreaming of buying a small piece of land where they could build a home. They did eventually travel to Santa Fe and met Kate's cousin, a kind woman named Margaret who welcomed them warmly. But after a month, they decided to return to El Paso. It had become their home, the place where they had started their life together. One morning, about 6 months after the lightning strike, Rowan woke with a strange sensation. There was something different, though he could not quite name it. He lay still, trying to understand what had changed, and then he saw light. Not clearly, not sharply, but there was light where there had been only darkness. He could see the vague shape of the window, the pale glow of dawn. "Kate," he said, his voice shaking. "Kate, wake up." She stirred beside him. "What is it? Are you all right? I can see light." "Not much, just a little, but I can see it." She sat up quickly. "Are you certain?" "Yes. Look, I can tell where the window is. I can see your shape next to me. It is all blurry and dim, but it is there." She grabbed his hands, her voice full of excitement and hope. "Oh, Rowan, this is wonderful. Maybe your sight is coming back." Over the next few weeks, his vision slowly improved. It never returned completely to what it had been. There was a permanent dimness, a fuzziness at the edges, and bright light caused him pain. But he could see well enough to navigate, to make out faces, to watch the sunset. The first time he saw Kate clearly, he wept. She was even more beautiful than he had imagined, with expressive blue-gray eyes and a smile that lit up her entire face. He touched her cheek, marveling that he could both see and feel her. "You are perfect," he said. "Absolutely perfect." "I am the same person I was when you could not see me," she said, but she was crying too, happy tears that spilled down her cheeks. "I know. But now I get to see you smile, see you move through the world. It is a gift I never thought I would have again." His partial vision changed things, but not as much as one might think. He still needed Kate's help with many tasks, still relied on her guidance and support. But now he could also help her, could work alongside her, could contribute more fully to their household. They bought their land a year after they married, a small plot on the edge of El Paso with a view of the mountains. Together, they built a modest house, Rowan doing what he could with his limited vision, Kate directing and helping. It was hard work, but they did it together, and that made it joyful. Their first child, a daughter, was born in the spring of 1879. They named her Rose, and Rowan held her with trembling hands, able to see her tiny face, her perfect features. She had Kate's eyes and his dark hair, and she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Look at her," he whispered. "She is perfect." "She is ours," Kate said, smiling up at him from the bed. "Our little miracle." 2 years later, they had a son whom they named Jack after Rowan's father, and 2 years after that, another daughter, Lucy. Their house was full of noise and laughter and love, and sometimes Rowan would stop in the middle of some task and just listen to his family, overwhelmed with gratitude. He never went back to living in the mountains. The partial loss of his vision made that life impossible, and besides, he had no desire to return to that solitary existence. His life was here now, with Kate and their children, with the community they had built in El Paso. He still made baskets and brooms, and Kate still sewed, and together they made enough to live comfortably, if not lavishly. But wealth had never been their goal. They had each other and they had their children, and that was more than enough. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Rowan and Kate would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. She would still describe things to him sometimes, painting pictures with her words, and he would hold her hand and thank God or fate or whatever power had brought them together. "You ever think about that day on the ridge?" Kate asked one evening, her head resting on his shoulder. "When the lightning struck, sometimes," he said. "It was the worst and the best day of my life. I lost my sight, but I found you. I would not change it, even if I could. I think about it too, about how I was sitting up there trying to decide what to do with my life, feeling so lost and alone. And then I heard you calling for help, and suddenly I had a purpose. You gave my life meaning when I needed it most. We saved each other," he said, echoing words she had spoken so long ago. "Yes, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. The mountains stood dark against the fading light, and Rowan thought about all the years he had spent up there alone, thinking he was free. He had not known what freedom really was until he met Kate. Freedom was not solitude. It was love. It was choosing someone and being chosen in return. It was building a life together, facing whatever came with courage and trust. The lightning had taken his sight, but Kate had given him something far more precious. She had given him a home, not just a place but a feeling, a sense of belonging that he had never known before. She had guided him down from the mountain with her voice and his trust, and in doing so, she had led him to the life he was always meant to have. Years passed. Their children grew. Rose became a teacher, Jack a carpenter, Lucy a midwife. They all married and had children of their own, and Rowan and Kate's house was often full of grandchildren, their laughter echoing through the rooms. Rowan's vision continued to be imperfect, but he adapted. He learned his limitations and worked within them. He never regretted the lightning strike because it had brought him to Kate, and everything good in his life flowed from that moment on the ridge. When they were old, in their 60s, they would sit on that same porch and talk about the life they had built together. Rowan's hair was white now, his hands gnarled with arthritis, but Kate still held them like they were precious. Her hair was silver, her face lined with the years, but to Rowan, she was as beautiful as the day he first touched her face in the moonlight. "We have had a good life," she said one evening. "Have we not?" "The best life," he agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. If you could go back and change that day on the ridge, would you?" He thought about it, really thought about it. The lightning had caused him so much pain and fear. But it had also led him to Kate, to their children, to this rich, full life. "No," he said finally. "I would not change a single thing. Every moment of darkness led me to you, and that makes it all worthwhile." She smiled and kissed his cheek. "I love you, Rowan Xavier. I have loved you since the day I found you lost on that mountain, and I will love you until the day I die. And I love you, Kate Xavier. You are my light, my guide, my everything. You always have been." They sat together as the sun set one more time, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and beautiful. The mountains stood eternal in the distance, witnesses to their love story, and the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Rowan could not see them clearly, but he knew they were there, just as he knew Kate was beside him. Some things did not require perfect vision. Some things were known by the heart, and those were the truest things of all. In the years that followed, they watched their grandchildren grow and their family expand. Rowan taught his grandsons to weave baskets by feel, passing on the skills Kate had taught him so long ago. Kate sewed clothes for all the children and grandchildren, her fingers still nimble despite her age. They never forgot where they came from, the mountain ridge where lightning had struck and changed everything. Sometimes, on clear days, Rowan would look toward the distant peaks and remember the man he had been, alone and independent and unknowingly lonely. He bore no resemblance to that man anymore. He had been transformed by love, by partnership, by the daily choice to build a life with someone else. When Rowan was 72, he fell ill with pneumonia. Kate nursed him through it with the same steady competence she had shown that first day on the mountain, and he recovered, though he was weaker afterward. They both knew their time was growing shorter, but they did not speak of it. There was no need. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and that was enough. On a warm spring evening in 1899, they sat on their porch one last time, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Rose had brought a cake to celebrate their 46th wedding anniversary, and there was laughter and music and joy. As the celebration wound down and the family began to leave, Rowan and Kate remained on the porch, hand in hand as always. 46 years, Kate said softly. Where did the time go? It went into this, Rowan said, gesturing at the house, the land, the departing family. Into building something that will last beyond us. We did well, did we not? We did better than well. We did wonderfully. Kate leaned against him, and he put his arm around her, holding her close. The night was warm and full of cricket song, and the stars were bright overhead. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night in your camp?" Rowan asked. "You said maybe we saved each other." "I remember. It was true then, and it is true now." "You saved me in more ways than I can count, Kate. You gave me a life worth living when I thought everything was lost. You gave me love and family and purpose. I could never repay that debt. There is no debt between us, only love, only partnership. We walked this road together, and that is all that matters." They sat in comfortable silence, and Rowan thought about that terrified man on the ridge, blind and lost and certain his life was over. If he could go back and speak to that man, he would tell him that the best part of his life was about to begin. He would tell him to trust the woman with the gentle voice, to follow her down the mountain, to open his heart to the possibility of love. He would tell him that lightning might have taken his sight, but it had given him everything else that mattered. As the night deepened and the air grew cool, Kate and Rowan finally went inside, their arms around each other, their steps slow but steady. They had walked this path together for 46 years, and they would walk it together until the end, wherever and whenever that might be. Their story was not one of grand adventures or dramatic rescues, though it had started with both. It was a story of daily choosing, of small acts of love and kindness, of building a life brick by brick, moment by moment. It was a story of trust and partnership, of finding light in darkness, of home. And it was a story that would live on in their children and grandchildren, passed down through the generations. The tale of how lightning took his sight on the ridge, and she guided the mountain man home with her voice and his trust, and how they found in each other everything they had been seeking without knowing it. It was a love story, simple and profound, and it was theirs. Years later, when both Rowan and Kate had passed peacefully in their sleep within months of each other, their family gathered to remember them. Rose stood before the assembled crowd and told the story of how her parents met, how her mother had saved her father's life, and how they had saved each other's hearts. "They taught us that love is not about perfect circumstances," Rose said, tears streaming down her face. "It is about choosing someone and standing by them through whatever comes. My father was blind for most of his life, but he saw more clearly than most sighted men because he saw with his heart. And my mother was his eyes, yes, but he was her strength, her partner, her truest love. Together, they were complete. The family buried them side by side on their land, with a view of the mountains where their story had begun. On the shared headstone, their children inscribed words that captured the essence of their love. Rowan and Kate Xavier. He was lost. She guided him home. Together, they found everything. And in the years that followed, when the grandchildren and great-grandchildren would visit that grave, they would stand and look toward the mountains and tell the story again, keeping the memory alive. The story of the lightning strike, the blind mountain man, the woman who guided him with her voice, and the love that grew between them against all odds. It became a family legend, a testament to the power of trust and love and partnership. And though Rowan and Kate were gone, their love remained, woven into the fabric of the family they had created, echoing through the generations like a song that never ends. In the mountains above Picos, the wind still blows across the ridge where lightning once struck. The pine trees grow tall and strong, and sometimes, on quiet evenings, if you listen carefully, you might hear the ghost of a song carried on the wind, a woman's voice singing hymns of grace and redemption. And you might imagine a man following that voice down the mountain, trusting it to lead him home, not knowing that home was not a place but a person, and that the journey would be the beginning of the greatest adventure of his life. The mountains remember. The wind remembers. And the story lives on, a testament to the truth that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to us leads us to the best thing we never knew we needed. Lightning took Rowan's sight, but it gave him Kate, and that made all the difference. Their love story ended not with their deaths, but with the continuation of the family they built, the values they instilled, the example they set. They showed everyone who knew them that real love is not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It is about showing up every day, helping each other through the darkness, and choosing to walk the road together no matter where it leads. And in that, they achieved something far greater than either of them could have accomplished alone. They built a legacy of love that would outlast them both, that would ripple forward through time, touching lives they would never meet, but forever influencing through the family they created. On the land they bought and loved, where they built their house and raised their children, a great oak tree grew. No one remembered exactly when it had been planted, but family legend said that Rowan and Kate had planted it together in their first year on the land, a symbol of their growing love and their hope for the future. The tree grew tall and strong, its roots going deep, its branches spreading wide. In summer, it provided shade for family gatherings. In winter, it stood stalwart against the wind. And always, it remained a living monument to Rowan and Kate Xavier, the mountain man and the woman who guided him home. Children played under its branches. Lovers carved their initials in its trunk. And on quiet evenings, when the family gathered for reunions and celebrations, someone would always tell the story of how it all began, on a ridge in the mountains, with lightning and darkness and a voice singing hymns. And the story would end the same way every time, with the reminder that love is not about what we can see but about what we choose to believe in, to trust in, to build together. Rowan could not see Kate with his eyes for most of their life together, but he saw her more clearly than anyone ever had because he saw her with his heart. That was the lesson they left behind, the gift they gave to everyone who came after them. See with your heart. Trust in love. Choose each other, every day, no matter what. And build something that will last, something that will outlive you, something that will make the world a little better for your having been in it. Rowan Xavier was struck by lightning on a ridge in the mountains of Texas in the summer of 1877, and it took his sight. Kate Lawson guided him down that mountain with her voice and his trust, and in doing so, she led him to the life he was always meant to live. They fell in love. They built a home. They raised a family. They grew old together, hand in hand, heart to heart, until death parted them. And then they were reunited, their love story complete, perfect in its imperfection, beautiful in its simplicity, eternal in its truth. That is the story of Rowan and Kate Xavier, and it is a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth passing down through the generations as a reminder of what really matters in this life. Not sight, but vision. Not independence, but partnership. Not perfection, but love. And in the end, love was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.